Welcome to the Modernize or Die podcast, CFML News Edition, where we keep you up to date with everything going on in the ColdFusion community. We'll share the latest news on events, releases to engines, frameworks, libraries, and tools, as well as spotlighting quality content from the community.
Hello everybody. Woohoo! Welcome to the Modernize or Die podcast, CFML News Edition. It is October 27th, 2020. I'm Eric Peterson, and I'm joined by Mr. Brad Wood. How you doing, Brad?
Yay. I'm doing great, Eric. What happened to Gavin? Did he fall off the edge of the planet or something?
No, Gavin's doing all the behind-the-scenes work again.
It's like the Wizard of Oz. He's pulling the levers behind the little curtain. Pay no attention.
Right. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Okay, all right.
So, but he chose to have the two of us talking, which is good news for us, and maybe that's it.
Good news for egg lovers.
So we'd like to start off by thanking our sponsor, Ortus Solutions. You can get live training for the makers of your favorite box product. The last virtual workshops of the year are coming up. It's quick here on November 5th and 6th. Additionally, CFCasts releases new free and paid content every week. So check it out at cfcast.com. And thank you, Ortus Solutions. Also, thank you to our Patreon supporters. We currently have 33 Patreon supporters, providing 57% of our funding for these podcasts. If you love our podcasts and what we bring to the CFML community, consider chipping in. You can see all the different tiers at patreon.com/Ortus Solutions.
Awesome. We have, 33 patrons right now.
Yeah, it's great. And we are so grateful for them. We'll be reading their names at the end, as usual.
We'll be butchering their names as much as possible at the end.
I think
so
we could do a lot worse on the names if we tried.
Oh, so. Yeah. yes, we could. You have to pay extra for that.
Yeah.
So speaking of news and events, what do we have queued up here?
So the first one, let's see. I guess I keep that. Sorry, I'm relearning how to run the slides. The first one that we'll talk about is ColdBox 6.1 has been released.
All right. First minor release of the 6 series.
That's right. It's a pretty small release, a few bug fixes and improvements, and the new feature is for your query string. When you pass it to a build link call, it can now be a struct, which will be converted to the right format in the query string, which I love. So,
So what's funny is we borrowed that from Framework 1. That's a feature that Framework 1 does. And I was converting an application for one of our clients from Framework 1 to ColdBox. And, for the most part, it was very straightforward. Just kind of find and replace, change the build link, change the redirect calls and stuff like that. And I noticed that their link building functionality did the struct stuff. I was like, that's actually kind of handy. Let's just go ahead and add that into ColdBox, since the way they were using it, they had optional query parameters, and it was a little bit easier to deal with optionally adding keys to a struct as opposed to optionally building up the string. So anyway,
anytime you can avoid doing string concatenation is a win in my book. So lists are handy, but it's always a bit of a pain and never performs as well as a struct or an array under any kind of load. So right,
I agree with that.
You can go ahead and upgrade your applications. Again, it's just a minor update, so no breaking changes, and enjoy the new goodness in ColdBox 6.1.
So if you're using CommandBox, that's just you CD into the root of your project and you run update, and it'll say, hey, there's an update for ColdBox. Do you want to install it? And you say, yes, I do.
That is assuming your semver range includes 6.1, but yes.
So by default, if you just typed install ColdBox using application template, you should have a caret range, which should automatically pull it in. But yes, if you pinned 6.0.0 exactly, then obviously it won't pull it in. Good old semvar ranges.
We were talking about those yesterday, about how the 0.* ranges, the semantic version ranges, are weird. Documented, but always trip me up, since in the 0. ranges, they're all major versions in the second number. So
Yeah, I guess that's kind of popular in a lot of node libraries where you have these libraries that never reach a 1.0. It's almost like Java, but Java never reached the 2.0. You say like
Yeah.
1 point something forever. These libraries are like 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, and like years go by and eventually they're, essentially like, you know what, I guess, 0.5 is pretty much just version 5. So then you have the caret ranges that kind of say, okay, all right, the leftmost non-zero integer, that's now your major version. And that's what the caret ranges. But it's a little non-intuitive if you're not aware of it.
Right. It just makes me laugh since everybody's like, oh, we don't want a 1.0 because we want to change our mind. But yet we've built our tools to treat it as major versions. So really, we just did nothing different. I don't know what the difference is between having a 0.20 versus a version 20. So
the proof's sort of in the pudding, I think. I mean, if you're going to change the API of a library, then you're going to change the API of the library, period. I mean, people are going to have to go through the work of that. It's really just like keeping off the guilty feeling of, oh man, I don't want to have to do a major version bump. It seems like that's all you're really avoiding when you avoid the major version. And of course, your theory has kind of been like, you want to make a breaking change, just make it, and then bump the major version. What's the problem?
right. So anyway, that was kind of a tangent, but
well, anytime you can change non-semantic versions is
semantics.
So,
all right, next piece of news. We have a release candidate for CommandBox right now, Brad. How about you tell us about that?
Yeah, we're in a release candidate. I probably really should cut RC.2 since I changed it, but I was feeling a little lazy, so I just updated the builds for RC.1. So if you downloaded the first release candidate of CommandBox, you should download it again because I did update it. So I got some feedback, which is good. Makes me glad I did a release candidate because I hate pushing stuff out. And you're like, all right, major release, everybody update. And like, 1 day later, someone's like, hey, this isn't right, is it? You're like, ah, crap. So yeah, I got some feedback. I talked to Pete Freitag about some of the security stuff. The automatic locking down, and he had some really good additions. And I also was dealing with some security things we really wanted to tighten down because one of the biggest goals for this release is secure by default, because everybody has learned, and that's Adobe, that's Lucee, that's ColdBox. People never lock stuff down. They always leave the administrator open. They always leave the default passwords. They always leave the debugging templates on. And so with CommandBox, I've just been in a warpath saying, okay, it has to be, you drop CommandBox on a server, you start a server, it needs to be secure, like right then, right? But I want it to be easy to be like, oh, I want to be in developer mode. Okay, everything opens back up. So there's some stuff that was pointed out, some additional security things. And so we're now blocking flash remoting by default in production mode, which again could potentially be backwards compatibility, but there's a nice little easy flag. If you're one of the 1% of people using Flash or Flex Forms with your CommandBox server, you can just turn it right back on. It's fine. We've changed the static files on the web server to be a whitelist. I don't like that necessarily because it's a bit heavy-handed, but there were some things you could do that I didn't like with CommandBox and Undertow, that the only way to really truly say, no, this is completely guaranteed, this can't be exploited, was just to give a whitelist. So basically, the static server inside of CommandBox will only serve up, it's a pretty big list. I have it in the docs, the text files, HTML files, JSON files, all that stuff that it will serve up, but it won't serve up, jar files by default, or DLLs or EXEs, or CFM files or anything like that. It's just static content. So I updated the release blog to have a couple kind of compatibility notes. That's just you may have relied on being able to directly download jar files from your site, and it's not going to work. But there's everything I've done that is a backwards compatibility change. I say backwards compatibility. It's a change in how the web server works. I have a flag that you can flip to get the old behavior back, but it's just something you need to be aware about. It's all in the docs, and I'm feeling really good about the security of just kind of the default lockdown to get out of the box now. And of course, if you have any additional feedback, things that you think CommandBox should be blocking, like .env files, box.json files, so anything I've missed, holler at me and we can look at getting it added. But that's what that is.
Got it. Yeah, I thought it was funny your point about not liking to do a point update right after a major. I feel like that's like a rite of passage. I don't know. I'd love to get some statistics on, number of libraries that had a major version and how long between that and their first patch. I bet it's less than a day for most.
That would be a good question. Of course, I mean, Adobe's unfortunately broken stuff in updaters, and they just like take a month to fix it, so they don't always turn around and release something. But yeah, that's the way it is. I mean, library developers always want people to test stuff before they release it. And users of the product just want the stupid library developers to not code bugs, so they don't have to worry about it, and they just upgrade it and it all works. Maybe someday we'll figure that out.
Yeah, I think the best testing I've ever gotten is just on the libraries that I code myself and the projects that use them, because then I can kind of sneak it in. Like, okay, we're updating to the beta today. Oh, there's problems.
Yeah. And that's why I don't like to close tickets right before a release. I like there to be like a bit of gap where like nothing's been touched, nothing's been crammed in at the last minute. I mean, because like the CommandBox 5.1.1 release was a fix for a commit that went in like 2 days before the CommandBox 5.1.0 release, which is like the exact scenario I don't like to do, because that's always the time something sneaks in. So yeah, I like to have it kind of just sitting out there and using it, because a lot of times you'll kind of rat out those bugs yourself if you give yourself some time.
Very true. Well, everybody, go ahead and upgrade CommandBox. You can do that right from CommandBox using upgrade -- latest.
Yeah, and that'll give you the download link where you can go get whatever the binary is for your operating system. Yep.
Awesome. All right, next, there's been a a release of the Lucee Spreadsheet Library 2.12. I love the Lucee Spreadsheet Library. It is fantastic.
So to be clear, this isn't the CF Spreadsheet extension. This is the library that does the same kind of stuff, but it's just like a service object, right?
Yes, it's not a Lucee extension. It's just drop it in, load up the jar files, which I think it's like the POI library underneath, and then it's a very efficient spreadsheet library. I remember when we switched from at the previous job from Adobe ColdFusion to Lucee, we were very surprised how much faster this was than kind of the native CF spreadsheet stuff.
I'm not that surprised, because I've seen some pretty terrible performance on Adobe ColdFusion with big spreadsheets. So yeah, Sam Knowlton just said in the Slack, it's the library that people actually use instead of the spreadsheet extension. I think if you have an Adobe ColdFusion code base and you want us to be able to throw it on Lucee and make it work, you can drop in the CF spreadsheet extension. I think for the most part it works. But from what I've always heard, and luckily I don't deal much with spreadsheets. And when I do, if it's just a basic export, I'll totally cheat and just make it be like a CSV file with the right extension, because Excel will open it. But from what I've always heard is that this library here, the Lucee Spreadsheet, is super powerful, and it's really not that much work to convert, a CF Spreadsheet tag over to just use the calls in this library, which is, purely CFML wrapped around the POI stuff. So I've always heard great things about it.
Yeah. More follow-up from Sam Knowlton in the chat is that they use that extension for Lucee, and it made them sad, according to his words. He says about 10 minutes to update 20 calls, and they were done. So
to the Lucee Spreadsheet
library. So we're not talking about a big migration. So yeah, version 2.12 is out. You can go grab it. That one is on ForgeBox as well. So.
Do you know if there's release notes anywhere that talks about what's in this version?
I can drop a link to the tag. The GitHub tag has some release notes. Okay. So
I'm reading through the README, which has a bunch of information, but I don't see like a. Of course, Julie.
Okay, Brad, hold on just a second. People are telling us they lost audio for you, which is probably my fault. Try again.
La, 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 la. Can you guys hear me now? Can you hear me now? Check. Check into cache.
All right, we're back.
Into cache. Ooh.
All right. Sorry about that, everybody. What Brad said was genius, and
I solved world hunger. I mean, jeez.
Or just something about Lucee Spreadsheet. So
yeah, that too. Eric thought we were going by the presidential debate rules, where they were just going to mute the mic when the time was up. So I guess my time was up.
Alrighty, next point. Let's go to the Ortus October webinar has been announced. It is From Mura to ContentBox, staying on the open source upgrade track. So, you might have heard the news, especially if you've listened to our podcast, that Mura has gone to closed source and to a different licensing model. And for those of you who are now wondering, well, we didn't really need all the power of Mura and all the licensing that comes with that. We'd like to stay on something open source. ContentBox is an awesome option. So John Clausen is going to take us through some of the differences between Mura and ContentBox and how to migrate your application. So he is. It said that he is going to do a full conversion of a Mura CMS site to ContentBox in this webinar. So that's going to be pretty cool.
That does sound good. I think there's a lot of people probably in the position of using Mura right now, and they're just using it for an open source purpose, and they don't want to switch to the new licensing. So I think ContentBox is an excellent destination for them to jump to. I was just talking with someone yesterday on Slack, and they were saying, but this ContentBox doesn't have as many extensions as Mura. I say, well, honestly, it probably doesn't. Mura has had a pretty big ecosystem, but the way that we get an ecosystem in ContentBox is that people build stuff and they put it on ForgeBox. If you go to ForgeBox right now, you can look at the ContentBox themes category, the ContentBox widgets category, and the ContentBox modules category, and you can see quite a good list of community-built themes and modules and widgets that are out there. But ContentBox is incredibly extendable. It's built on top of ColdBox MVC, so it has the whole modular framework underneath it, and it's probably more now. At one time, Luis had said there were over 200 custom interception points that fire inside of ContentBox whenever blogs are published, authors are added, events happen, and those are all extension points. You can write a module to tie in, and you can customize ContentBox. So if you're doing some custom stuff in Mura and you're thinking, is this possible in ContentBox? The answer is probably certainly yes. It may not be built right now, but it can be, and we would love to see it added to ForgeBox so other people can use it. So yeah. I don't know. I'm excited about people coming over to ContentBox and helping bring some of that ecosystem with them.
Yeah, absolutely. So that webinar is this Friday. It's at 11 a.m. Central Time here in the United States. And you can register at ortussolutions.com/events/webinars.
And you have that link in the chat. Perfect.
Okay. A couple, in case you missed it, there was an online CF meetup. It was a CF AMA, Ask Me Anything, with Charlie Arehart and Dan Wilson. So they, as you might be able to tell from the title, it was asking them anything. So I'm actually not sure. Were you able to attend that one, Brad?
I did not make it. Charlie's in the chat. Maybe he can give us a quick update. Tell us if anybody asked them any really embarrassing personal questions or.
It says really that they were looking at about CF features, coding challenges, configuration or tuning, upcoming CF version, things like that.
All right. Charlie says it went well, and the recording is available online at recordings.coldfusionmeetup.com, which I think is one of the links we have. So
yeah, I put in a link straight to the YouTube. I believe we can get there the same. You can get there through the recordings as well.
Perfect. So. Charlie says they're going to do another one, and I assume he means another Ask Me Anything. So will it be you and Dan again, or will you guys mix it up? Give Charlie a second to respond. He says he could mix it up.
Ooh. Well, we'll see who he gets on this next time. So yeah, we'll let you know when that's announced and how you can watch it. So thanks for participating in the chat here, Charlie. That helps us out. Next, we have the Seattle ColdFusion user group, which is also online. It has a hands-on deep dive into interacting with the Thinkific API.
And this is November 11th, 6 p.m. Pacific time. So I'm assuming that this is online.
Yes.
I just want to check.
So, yep, you can go learn about the Thinkific API. Thinkific is a top platform for online course delivery. And I believe it builds on one of the meetups they had this month about interacting with the Thinkific API. So, yes. In fact, that's our next point in the news is there is a recording of their last meetup, which was on integrating your ColdFusion app with Thinkific again. So, looks like we're going deeper.
Nice.
We'll put both those links in the show notes, one to register for the next meetup and one to watch the recording of the last one.
Got it. Yeah, I like this as a series because when you started announcing this one, I was thinking, man, I thought this one already happened. But they're doing more than one on the same thing. So, yeah, the 14th was the October 14th was the first one. This is pretty cool. I'm guessing someone at their user group is doing some cool stuff with Thinkific, which probably spawned this.
Yeah, that's
like
awesome. Okay, last bit of news is just to remind you that this is the last week of HacktoberFest 2020. So again, HacktoberFest is a way to give back to open source in opening 4 pull requests throughout the month of October. I know I've gotten quite a few on the docs for QB and Quick, which I very much appreciate.
Mm-hmm. All of our docs have gotten quite a few pull requests. That reminds me, I need to get a couple stinking pull requests in.
Yeah, got to make sure you catch up, right?
I know. Well, the first couple that I had were actually some of my pull requests to Lucee, which ironically I didn't do originally for Hacktoberfest, but it was like, oh, hey, this will be perfect. Yeah, so I only have 2 of 4. I need to find a couple pull requests somewhere that I can send in to get my 4. I only have a few days left.
Yeah, and also remember that if you do submit a pull request, you might need to gently ask the maintainer to add the right Hacktoberfest tags.
Yeah, the tag can be added to the main repo, or they can put a tag on the pull request itself, and it needs to be merged or accepted, I believe, to count.
Yep. So, if it has the right tag, it doesn't have to be merged.
Okay, so just tagging the pull.
If the pull request is tagged Hacktoberfest accepted, it counts just like that.
Got it.
If the repo is tagged with Hacktoberfest, it must be approved or merged.
All right, that makes sense.
So
that's good. I mean, that doesn't put pressure on maintainers if there's a big poll and they're not quite ready to approve it, but they appreciate it and want it to still count. They can at least put the tag on it.
Additionally, you can add that tag and close the pull request. You know, maybe you don't want to add that to your project. You can still, validate their effort.
Yeah, well, I've seen pulls that end up getting manually merged a slightly different way, but the code still makes it into the project one way or another.
Exactly. So last week, if you are looking to get that in and maybe you haven't started yet, again, docs are a great place to go. Read through the docs, and when you see something that doesn't quite make sense or some typos, open the pull request for it.
And all of the Ortus docs are on GitHub. All the Lucee docs are on GitHub. All of CF docs are on GitHub. And I believe all of those repos are tagged for Hacktoberfest. And the Ortus docs, we usually merge those pulls the second they pop in our inbox. I mean, I look at it to make sure it's nothing silly, and as long as it's as long as it's like, yep, that's a real pull, merge. Don't waste time on those.
Awesome.
All right, so some new content on CFCasts.
Yes, there we go.
Ooh, we just debuted our bite-sized Spanish language videos.
Yeah, we've been hard at work getting CFCast ready to be multilingual, localized, and we got our first videos going up this last week.
Who's going to read these? Bases de la programación, introducción, conceptualización, parte uno. I don't know if I did any of that right. I can tell it says
pretty good.
Introduction and concept part 1. All right, this is awesome. I mean, I know that, Ortus has, Luis just exploded. Ortus is really, trying to push for CFML uptake and some
Hey, Brad, hold on. Whatever happened before happened again. Okay, now you're back again. I don't know what that is. I apologize.
Oh, I'm back.
You're back.
No, I was just saying how exciting it is to have stuff in Spanish, and I'm sure that whatever work was done to be able to do 2 languages can probably be built on if we want to do additional languages as well in the future. So
I know coming soon, these videos will be marked with, a little flag for the language, and you'll be able to in your profile show which languages you'd like to see videos for. So if you don't speak Spanish and you don't want those videos to pop up, you can hide those. If you speak both languages and want to see both, you can see that. So,
or maybe if you want to learn Spanish, this is your chance to just absorb Spanish content.
That's right.
You've been waiting for this moment.
And it's nice to be ready for the upcoming Into the Box Latam and be ready to host all those videos here on CFCasts as well.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right. Speaking of conferences, what is this group buy conference here in the show notes? I've never heard of this.
Yeah, it's a free volunteer run event for SQL. So I haven't attended it myself, but it is this week on October 27th and 28th. But that's today and tomorrow. But you can still sign up. Again, it's free, and it's just going into different SQL topics. So it is a nice name. Group Buy is a great name for a conference about SQL.
I feel like they could take it farther, like they could work more like SQL keywords somehow into their conference, like a having track and an aggregate track. I don't know, just spitballing here.
So you can go check that out. Again, it's going on right now. Free, groupbuy.org. Okay. Next one we have is, we talked about this earlier, there's one more virtual training for Ortus this year. It is November 5th and 6th, and it is on Quick, and that will be led by myself. You can go ahead and sign up at ortussolutions.com/events and use the coupon code podcast10 for 10% off.
So that's in like a week and a half, right?
Yep. That's not this weekend, but the next one.
John Farrar, have you signed up yet?
I know.
Actually, I don't think John's in the chat today.
Well, we're calling you out because you've asked me more than anybody else.
Doesn't that mean he gets a free ticket?
No. Yeah,
it's worth a shot.
So, and again, if you've been saving your Into the Box coupon as well, you can use that on this. That should be in your email, and if it isn't, go ahead and reach out to us.
So we got Deploy by DigitalOcean.
Yeah, this one...
This is the 24-hour conference, isn't it?
This is a 24-hour conference, so no matter where you are, you'll be able to get in on some of the conference. So
we prefer the term time zone independent.
There you go. And this one seems to be a little bit of everything, which you might expect from DigitalOcean since they host a little bit of everything. So some on scaling, some on databases, e-commerce. There's likely something that you care about in there. I believe it's free as well. And again, 24 hours. So
I'd like to see some of the scaling stuff. So, I mean, for any of you guys that don't know, Ortus hosts our own sites on DigitalOcean. So ForgeBox.io, the Ortus Solutions blog, and the ColdBox site, even our Into the Box site, all that stuff we're hosting on Docker Swarm, which is part of DigitalOcean. So little selfish in my curiosity in some of the stuff, just since this is stuff that actually sort of applies to our stack. I mean, in theory, we could host just about anywhere, but we like DigitalOcean.
Yeah.
Scrolling through here, looking at their topics.
So to jump back a few steps, Scott in the chat was asking about what's in the pipeline for CFCasts. And I can't give you dates or even the order it comes out, but some of the things that are being working on are some more CF config videos. What's new in ColdBox 6, VS Code and CFML, and more lessons in the getting started with Quick or build a blog with Quick. So those are some of the ones that are being worked on right now, as well as a few other Spanish videos in the series that we just talked about.
All right, here's a topic on the DigitalOcean Deploy conference. It's called, quote, "Building an Observability Platform in 389 Difficult Steps," end quote.
Wow.
Seems a little tongue-in-cheek.
I love it. I want to go see that now and count all 389 steps. Cool.
Yeah,
So that's
how many slides does this guy have?
So that's the DigitalOcean deploy. You can go find more information at digitalocean.com/deploy. Next up, ColdFusion Summit 2020. It's November 17th through 19th online and free. They have posted some more speakers, and Brad, I was a little surprised by some of this.
What was surprising to you?
My picture's up there.
Okay, all right.
And I did submit a topic, but I don't remember being told what topic they wanted me to talk on.
Maybe they accepted all your topics.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to agree to that one. But there's more speakers up there, but still no sessions or anything like that. But we're eagerly awaiting.
What if you did all your topics?
There are sessions.
What? What if you did all your topics, but you combined it down to one? And you would just say one sentence from one topic and just skip to another sentence from another topic. And it would just be like, run your CommandBox scaffold, then bake at 350 for 2.5 hours,
It looks like there are some sessions up under schedule, so you can go ahead and go there. And I'm going to be doing view and inertia, looks like. So that's cool.
I don't see your name. Oh, were you on the 18th?
Yeah. There's a schedule, folks.
So now you know what topic you're doing live on the air. Eric has figured it out. Get your front end rolling with view and inertia. Better start writing that talk.
Oh, it's done. I need to update it for the latest version of inertia and maybe even the latest version of view, but we'll see.
Don't forget the part about bacon at 350 for 2.5 hours.
Well, that's cool. You can go ahead and check out the schedule now and see which ones that you want to attend. Remember, this is a free conference, so we expect to see you all there virtually.
No excuse. No, we don't mean like we want to virtually see you all there. Like we really actually want to see you all there, just virtually.
Awesome. Okay. Next up.
Certification. Adobe ColdFusion Certification available online.
Yep, and I believe it still has their introductory offer of $4.99 for that certification.
Do we know how long the introductory offer lasts for, or was there not an end date on it?
The introductory offer will exist until morale improves. What's that phrase?
No, the beatings will continue until morale improves.
There we go. So I'm not sure. I haven't heard about how long it's going to last, but it would be sad if you thought it was going to last longer and then it went up and you had to pay a higher price. So
sign up now, I guess.
There you go. And last, December 3rd and 4th is Into the Box Latam. This is the live virtual conference in Spanish and a little bit of English. It is
English.
$7, and you can find more at Latam, LATAM, .intothebox.org. And Brad, am I right that you're speaking this year at that one?
I am. I'm gonna do.
Are you the Spanglish one?
Hola, me llamo Bernardo. Yeah, so I'm doing a session on just getting introduced to CommandBox, because a lot of the people that they draw from El Salvador and Central America don't even know ColdFusion or CFML. But I'm going to be speaking in English, and they're going to help me get slides that have Spanish translations of, in theory, most of what I'm saying. So it'll be interesting to see how that works, but I have been roped into that.
I don't know how any slide could be a translation of what you're going to say.
Yeah, I usually say more words than what'll fit on the slides. So.
That'll be entertaining, though. So I'll have to go watch just that one and laugh.
Probably have to slow my roll a little bit and say less. I tend to be more like Luis, and I always joke that Luis is a more is more guy, and so am I. You know, people say less is more. I'm like, no, more is more. You mean less is more? That's dumb. It's more. All these features. Look at all the stuff you can do. So I'll have to figure out how to whittle that down.
Awesome. Okay, that's it for our conferences this week. Let's jump into some blogs, tweets, and videos of the week.
Got some from Ben Nadell queued up. I'll get a whole little Ben Nadell corner.
Yes, we do. It's like even labeled that in our show notes. It's the Ben Nadell blogs, tweets, and videos of the week. Let's jump into some of them. So the first one is about considering data workflows within a MongoDB data access layer.
I don't think I've read most of Ben's posts this week. I've somehow been incredibly busy.
Yeah. So this has been exploring, a data access layer in kind of the way I understand it, are a group of CFCs or a single CFC that you're writing to interact with a database. And usually that's, a SQL database, CF query, CF query param, all that. And Ben was exploring here, what would it look like to write that same data access layer, but this time with a document store like Mongo backing it.
I keep trying to get Ben onto Couchbase. I was even pointing out their nickel stuff on Twitter today, or not today, it was yesterday. This is the sort of idea that, that gateways or DAOs were kind of, sold back in like circa 2003. Abstract all of your data access into this magical CFC, and you can swap out SQL Server for, flat text file or XML or Mongo or whatever, and your application doesn't know or care. I don't know what I've actually seen any application that really did that, like just completely changed a backend data store and, the rest of their application didn't know or care.
Yeah.
But this is, at least that aside, a pretty interesting, just kind of like full experiment in what would it look like to have an entire, DAO that was all built on Mongo. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to look to see if he's passing back like CFC instances or just structs and arrays.
It's just some structs, not the Java like BSON documents, but it's native ColdFusion, like structs and arrays. So,
all right.
What you said about switching out the back end, I agree that most of the time, especially like a data access layer, it's just too big to like accurately map all of those things. That being said, early on in CFCasts development, I had started it as a Postgres app because I love Postgres, and then I was told, actually, this is going to be MySQL. And with one setting change, and I think I had to change the default key, it was working on MySQL. So,
but you were using Quick though, right?
Yeah, I was using Quick and QB, which there's been a lot of work done to make that way. So I'm sure you could do the same with your project, but it's probably just not worth the effort, and left better to a library. We have a few other libraries like that. I think of CB Mail Services, where you're able to switch out how you're sending emails or even send them to a log. But again, it makes a lot more sense in a library where you can have all of that tested and know it's working, and then you can use the library instead of having to build that yourself.
Yeah, I think you have to have a pretty healthy layer of abstraction to really pull off a little switch in the back end and everything just works. In reality, a lot of DAOs, I think, are pretty tightly coupled to the service that's calling them and what they expect to get and what they, expect to send back.
Yeah, agreed. And in most cases, especially on your database, that's fine. I mean, how often do you switch databases in your life? It's probably fine if you need to spend work making that nice.
Yeah, not that much. But I mean, it was the second thing that's kind of interesting about Ben doing this in Mongo. I would have thought 10 years ago that like everybody by 2020 would just be like writing their apps in NoSQL databases. Because when Mongo kind of blew up and was really big, and you saw all the user group, meetings and the conference sessions, and it was NoSQL is amazing. This is the new wave of the future. Everyone's going to write their apps in JSON and NoSQL. And I don't know that I know of anybody that I can think of off the top of my head that actually uses like a JSON document store as like the primary data storage for their application. It just never really seemed to catch on, which is interesting.
Yeah. I think the most that I've used it is actually with Elasticsearch, which you could argue is more of a document based, but kind of is serving a different need of quick searching rather than, actually not sure what the big NoSQL benefit is that they sell. I'm just a relational database guy.
See, it depends on your perspective, right? Because I mean, people would say NoSQL is amazing because there's no schema and you cram whatever you want into the JSON, and that's a feature. But a standard relational database guy might be like, no, that's terrible. Like that's not a feature, that's a detriment. A relational database is a feature because you have a schema and you can know the columns exist and they'll have values. So I think it kind of depends on how you look at it. But I like what you said. Go ahead.
It's like a dynamic versus static language.
Right. Now, I think that does fit more with ColdFusion since we kind of like to play fast and loose with our variables,
Yeah.
you know, unlike, you know, a strongly typed language like Java, you know. But anyway, I like what you had said, though, about I think the places where I have seen this is alongside a relational database. People have a database with their structure, their normalization, you know, their foreign keys, and then they have like these nice denormalized document stores that they kind of extract out of that, which can be indexed, it can, you know, be used for searching, it can be used for you know, kind of caching and stuff like that. And it does seem to work nice in that particular arena.
Yeah. Cool. Let's move on to the next Ben Nadal post about an experiment he tried with nested query objects. This one was weird. So he mentions that he noticed that queries, in addition to being able to take values, you know, like strings, numbers, timestamps, could take some other values like arrays, structs, and even other query objects.
Yeah, and basically you can cram anything you want in the cell of a query in ColdFusion. Any variable that you can have a reference to, you can stick it into a cell. Which I've used this a couple times. I don't do it all the time. Most people get queries from the database, and there's only a certain, you know, number of things they're going to have. But if you just create a query object manually, or take one from the database and start setting stuff into it, I was sharing with you earlier that the DocBox library actually does this internally. It has a query object of all the files on disk, and then as it loops over it, it kind of crams metadata and structs and arrays into it. Now, this obviously limits what you can do with it as far as like running queries of queries and stuff on it. And you can't run a query and filter on a column that has an array crammed into it. You'll probably get some weird error if you tried. But ColdFusion itself certainly doesn't really care what you stick into them, which is interesting.
Yeah. I think it's neat that it is flexible like that, though I have to say, as one that doesn't really use query objects and favors arrays instead, like this is even weirder.
I mean, see, I don't think it's any weirder than sticking any variable you want into a struct or sticking any variable you want into an array. I mean, the query is just a holder construct that's organized with an idea of columns and rows, and I can stick whatever the data I want in it, just like any other data structure in ColdFusion. It's just that you typically think of queries only having like strings, numbers, and dates.
Yeah. If you say so, I just am much more comfortable with arrays and structs, I guess.
But you would probably still have an array of structs, and the structs internally had other structs, and you wouldn't think anything about that.
No, I would not. So
that's all this is.
Alrighty. So thanks for that experiment, Ben. It was definitely interesting.
Yep.
Okay. Next one from Ben. I think we have two more. Is about using closures to encapsulate file read line operations in Lucee. And Brad, I think you had some comments on this based on what you do with the Rabbit SDK. Is that right?
Well, yeah. I don't know if Ben's blog was kicked off by my tweet or if this is something he was doing already. Oh no. So yeah, he was listening to our episode 75. And I was talking about a tweet that I sent where ColdFusion, in addition to its just file read function, which reads an entire file into memory, has built-in functions where you can read a file line by line, which is more performant and has less overhead. The trick with that is now you have to be more careful of your code in a way that Java developers do, where you have to open the file object, read the lines, and you have to put it inside of a try-catch, and you have to have a finally block, and you have to make sure you close the file object. Otherwise, you'll get really bad things that happen because these file objects get left open if there's an error that happens. And so Ben was talking about a really great way to kind of encapsulate that logic of you have to open it, you have to read it, you have to make sure you close it, and if you skip one of those steps, bad things happen, which is basically using closures to be able to encapsulate the work you want to do on the file object, and then wrapping up the opening and the reading and the closing all inside of a UDF, which I think is a great way to abstract this, because then in your code, the code that matters in your service layer, your handler, or wherever it is you're doing this, you can kind of dispense with that boilerplate of, oh crap, I forgot to use a finally block to close the file, and now I have a bunch of open file objects in production because it's not working right. And I pointed out to him on Twitter, I did the same thing in the Rabbit SDK, where you have to open a channel, you send commands on the Rabbit channel, and you have to close the channel. And if you skip the close, bad things happen and channels just get left open. What Ben's doing here with the open and closing of the file. I think it's a great way to encapsulate some of that boilerplate.
Yeah. I love as well passing functions everywhere. It's so flexible. I mean, that's what QB is really built on. Whenever you need to have a complex query, you just throw a closure in, and now you can do stuff inside there that I didn't have to think about. Would somebody want to do this with the library? It's just giving that control back to the user. So, okay.
Yeah, very cool.
One more from Ben. It is a closer look at error handling during parallel array iteration.
You know, it was funny. I kind of chuckled. Is Ben was talking about the run async and some of the each stuff, and he was sort of complaining to a bit that it's not a great method of handling when an error happens and you're doing these kind of asynchronous iterations over data structures. The irony is these are problems that have been solved in other languages. In like Java streams, for instance, they have much better ways to deal with what happens when an error happens while you're inside of a stream processing items. And ColdFusion has been much slower in kind of catching up with the design patterns that languages like Java have put into their streams.
Yeah.
But yeah, I as soon as I saw this post, I was like, yeah, I know where he's going with this, and these are the pain points that other languages are 5 years ahead of us. Now, if you use the CB Streams library that Luis wrote in ColdFusion, you get that power. But as Ben was pointing out, just doing a regular parallel iteration over an array, dealing with errors can be a bit of a pain.
That's right. Yeah. So the idea is throwing from an asynchronous block. In this case, it was using Lucee's parallel each. Does not stop the execution of the loop, which makes sense because it's been thrown back into a thread. And like Brad said, I immediately thought of either you can think of promises in JavaScript or futures in Java and in the CB futures built into ColdBox that make this much easier to catch errors and even stop the asynchronous processing if an error is thrown. So, yeah. Something to watch out for, and also a great plug for some more modern thread handling like CB Futures.
CB Streams. Wait, no.
Probably both. I'm referencing CB Futures that's built into ColdBox.
Right. Sorry, and I was thinking that Luis changed the name of it, and it was originally CB Futures, and now he called it something else. But it's not actually a standalone library. It's actually bundled with the box core, the Wirebox core, and the ColdBox core.
Right.
Because it just came across a GitHub repo like this week that was called like CB Futures. But then I was like, well, wait a minute, that's not what Luis eventually named it. I think Scott Steinbeck's right. I think Luis calls it just like the async manager now in ColdBox. But he'd originally started out calling the library CB Futures. But anyway, that's caused some confusion in my mind as to.
Got it. I'll throw the link to the ColdBox docs here in the show notes in the chats. I do believe he still has it called a ColdBox future, which is wrapping the Java's completable future.
Yeah, completable future. I was trying to see if I could find a page that talked about error handling in the futures, so I could send it to Ben, because my response to Ben is always, "No, we have a box library that does that, right?" So I was trying to see if I could find a reference to what I was talking about, but I'll have to dig through the docs. The GitHub search doesn't always serve me well.
Yeah. Okay, I think we've reached the end of the Ben section. We do have a few more blogs and tweets and videos to go over. So the first one, we have a couple next from Adam Cameron, who we haven't heard from in a while. So
who's that?
Let's dive into these. The first one is quickly running ColdFusion via Docker, and this is specifically Adobe ColdFusion using their image. So it's a nice overview. If you haven't ran Docker much, telling you how to bind the ports and get your volumes mounted and all that. Again, with the official Adobe ColdFusion image. We, of course, are biased and would probably reach for CommandBox image and run Adobe on that, but that's fine. You can use whatever one that you like.
You
And
can make life harder for yourself. We don't care.
and then the next one was looking at a issue with cache put and cache get in Lucee, or maybe it's ColdFusion. Maybe it's both. But it is kind of a common case of using and passing around structs, where structs are put by reference.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's showing an issue where you can put a struct into the cache, change the struct, and then when you ask it for it from the cache, it has been changed. It has been modified because it is just looking at that reference.
And it really applies to any complex variable. It could be an array, and it could be a query object as well.
Yeah, I know I've dealt with that quite a bit in QB. We have our own dedicated clone method because duplicate can be really bad. And but I can't just pass over a new one. Those structs have to be different. So
yeah, see, and I was already familiar with that. When I saw the tweet, I wasn't surprised at all, but I've actually gone around with that. Lucee had a built-in functionality back a handful of versions ago that severely bit a client of ours that we were doing some performance tuning with, and they were using the built-in query caching, where you just the little cached within, and behind the scenes, Lucee sticks the query object inside of whatever the query cache is, which in their instance, they were using, I think, RAM cache to some sort of, it might have been an EH cache, but whatever it was an in-process cache right there in RAM. And their site cached some pretty chunky query objects with a lot of rows. And under extreme load, when they was getting that query object out of the cache, Lucee was running it through the duplicate function. So it would duplicate the object coming out. So changes to the query wouldn't affect the one in cache. And of course, the tweet you're referencing was just talking about the generic cache get, cache put, and that behavior never existed there. This was specific to queries. And of course, under load with that particular client, their site would just fall over. Well, there was a couple things wrong. The first thing was that the duplicate was rather heavy and was unnecessary in 99% of the cases. The second problem was that there was some really stupid Java code in Lucee that made the duplicate single-threaded because the duplicate functions were synchronized. So when 50 threads all said, get me this object from the cache right now, and Lucee was like, hold on, let me duplicate it 50 times, they would all have to wait on each other, which was just terrible. Lucee, after working with Misha, he'd actually changed it so it no longer duplicates the query objects anymore, which I love. But he built a wrapper query object that's really smart. And if you try to modify the query in any way, at that point in time, it duplicates it right there. So the 99% of people that don't modify stuff they pull from the cache, no duplication happens. But as soon as you go in and you're like, I'm the 1% and I want to change the cell value, Lucee's like, hold on, let me duplicate it real quick.
Yeah.
But it still is a complex object. It's stored in an in-process cache, and unless work is done to duplicate it or to detach it, then you change it once, you change it everywhere. Which I can see how that would be unexpected if you're not looking for that to happen.
Another thing to note is, at least for EH cache, there is a copy on write setting that you can set. It is false by default. If you turn that on to true, it will duplicate it at the time you put it into the cache, and then they will no longer be the same reference. So, okay. We have a tweet from James Moberg asking about a Tomcat being out of date on ColdFusion 2016.
Yeah, I saw that tweet. He tweeted at the official Adobe security Twitter account, and they basically told him, yeah, you need to contact PCert. Because he had said something to the effect of, are you just for marketing? What is your purpose, Adobe security Twitter channel, if you apparently don't do anything? I'm guessing they're just used as a mouthpiece of, hey, security updates. They don't appear to actually do anything as far as reporting stuff. They just point you at the actual PCert. But yeah, there's a handful of kind of Tomcat security updates, like you said. And I think that he was pointing out that several of the Adobe ColdFusion releases, like 2016, which is still technically supported by Adobe, have not updated their versions of Tomcat. So
yeah,
good on James for keeping on them on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, the next is a video by Matt Clemente writing the CFML SDK for the EverSign API. So EverSign is an e-signature API, and if you have never used or watched Matt make an API, you're in for a treat, because he has made quite a few very well-designed API wrappers. So check out that video. We'll put the link in the show notes and here in the chat, and you can watch how he does that. Okay, the next one is by Steve Bryant, returning a list of related records in SQL Server. This was an interesting one because it has to do, so the SQL Server specific, but there's other ways to do this in other databases. Returning a list of related records inside of a query. So,
oh, yeah, I've seen this before. I haven't used this trick in years. Yeah, he uses the XML functionality to basically concat. It's kind of like an aggregate function, if you will.
Yeah.
That takes a list of things, wraps them up in a single cell with commas between them. It's a nice little trick.
Yeah, I believe in MySQL, I might get this wrong. Nope. No, it might be in SQL Server as well. There's a string ag function that does something similar, where it can take all the values in a column or in different rows and put a separator between them. So,
you know, back in the day when I was doing a lot of SQL Server 2005 stuff at one of my first jobs, I had a custom aggregate function I had installed. It was a little like CLR. It was like a DLL you had to install on SQL Server. And it specifically was an aggregate that would turn it into a column delimited list. And we'd really only use it for reporting. But if we had a report and we wanted, you know, aggregate up, you know, some items and put it in it. And it did the same basic thing as the XML. And I think this may have been before SQL Server had that built-in XML trick.
Yeah.
It's a nice little thing, though. I mean, I run into it a lot when I'm doing reporting, and I just want to be able to cram a list of things. I don't want to have to loop over it myself.
Yep. Okay.
Very good.
Ortus has published our ending the year on a high note, which is going over what we have left for this year, all the different events and workshops. So you can check that out on our blog to get a high-level overview. It includes some of our workshops and webinars and Into the Box Latam. And to wrap it up, we have a post by Pete Freitag, a one-liner to download a browser with PowerShell on Windows Server. So evidently Windows Server 2019, despite having 2019 in the name, still comes with IE 11.
Oh my gosh. That's funny. His blog opens up. It would be nice if Windows Server 2019 came with Microsoft Edge browser, but it still comes with good old IE 11, and he has good strike through. Just old IE 11.
So he has a
Oh my gosh, yeah, you have to jump through hoops.
Yep. So he has a PowerShell thing there for installing Microsoft Edge or Firefox. So
where's Chrome?
I don't know. Is that allowed on Windows Server? I guess Chrome and Chrome and Microsoft Edge basically the same thing now? They're both Chromium.
I really haven't used Edge that much. I still have a Windows 7 machine that I use for most of my stuff.
Oh, Brad.
I doubt Edge even runs on it.
Oh,
I
Brad.
can't upgrade it, man. The motherboard's from 2012 and it's too old to upgrade. I don't want to buy a whole new PC. I'm going to start my own Patreon.
I was going
to
say,
Brad
we need more Patreon supporters.
Help me get off Windows 7. It's cold and scary in here.
There's going to be people in the chat now that don't want you to upgrade, so you continue to support Windows 7 with CommandBox.
Charlie just had a really good point in the chat. I should have sent a tweet about this because I was watching it. I'm in the Adopt OpenJDK Slack, and I was watching the stuff come through. New updates to Java 8 and Java 11 have came out this week. They've already been added to the Adopt OpenJDK builds, and I know this because when I started a server yesterday, all of a sudden I saw it auto-downloading a new version of Java 11 because I was using CommandBox, of course, and I was like, oh, sweet, there must be a Java 11 update, and sure enough, there was some stuff coming out. I believe that I saw some chatter recently that Adobe takes a few days before they update their downloads. So if you're an Adobe ColdFusion person using the official Java downloads from Adobe, I think you have to wait a couple days for them to get the downloads on their site. But Oracle came out with them a few days ago. Like I said, the OpenJDK builds have already been pushing them. But yeah, it looks like Charlie has a blog post, I think, here. That covers some of that stuff too. So if you're all about the latest versions of Java, check those out. And of course, you may be thinking Java 11, why didn't Java 14 rubber things? Remember, Java 11 is the long-term support version of Java right now. So Java 12 and 13 and 14 are all kind of smaller releases. And I think Java 15 might be the next LTS. I'm not positive on that one, but that's why a lot of people are still on Java 11 because it's the one that's going to get all the updates.
Makes sense. Same reason I stick to the LTS versions on Node. I don't.
Wow. Okay. So Charlie says it's not going to be until Java 17 that's the next LTS. Dang. Oh, all right.
Okay. Okay. Let's switch over to Find a Job. So there are 3 new jobs this week on getcfmljobs.com. There is a senior ColdFusion developer at San Diego, California. A full-time ColdFusion development team lead in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And it looks like maybe the same ColdFusion development team lead was posted twice. So got a new Canada job and a new one in San Diego. Additionally, Get CFML Jobs has over 35 positions from 22 companies, 18 locations, and 5 countries. Lastly, Ortus still is accepting applications for a senior ColdFusion developer. U.S. time zone availability is a must, and U.S. citizen or resident or work visa. You can find more information about that one at ortussolutions.com/about-us/careers.
Sweet.
Okay, on to the ForgeBox module of the week.
Oh, you said it wrong. It's ForgeBox module of the week. Week. That's how it goes.
I really wish I had a soundboard right now. And Gavin, get one, take that clip, and just push the button.
I've told Gavin we should have little stupid transition songs and sound effects that it's like blogs and tips of the week. We push a button and some stupid jingle plays.
Yeah. If you would like that, please support us on Patreon.
Yeah.
Patreon.com.
We need you on Patreon to help us do this.
Okay. The ForgeBox module of the week is JSoup by Don Bellamy. So this one is something you can just box install CB JSoup, and it handles all the wiring up of the Java stuff for you. JSoup is an HTML parsing library built on Java, and you can give it an HTML string or path, and then kind of jQuery style selectors go through and find different nodes for it. I know I use JSoup in an old testing project called Integrated, which would let you make sure that different form fields are on the page and elements and fill them in, and it's a wonderful library. So that's CB JSoup by Don Bellamy.
Yeah, if you find yourself parsing HTML with regular expressions and you're thinking, this doesn't work very well, you need to look at JSoup.
It doesn't work well because it's not supposed to.
No,
HTML
that is correct.
HTML is not a regular language.
Mm-hmm.
So, on to the Visual Studio Code hint, tip, and trick of the week. We have a module called Copy Relative Path. It does exactly what it sounds like. And it will copy it from where you've opened the folder instead of the full absolute path. I've used it quite often in conjunction with CommandBox and specifically CF format when I want to format a single file and I don't want to just type it out and hit tab a bunch of times. I can copy the relative path, paste it in, and there you go. So
yeah, that's nice. I've wanted the same functionality before for the same reasons. I'm doing something inside of the web root of that project, and I want to be able just to snag just that without the C:/Brad document users blah 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 that comes before it.
Yep,
that's good.
So small extension does exactly what it sounds like. You can go ahead and install it today.
Does what it says on the tin, as Adam Cameron used to say.
That's right. Okay, that brings us here to the end and to our Patreon supporters.
Parting is such sweet sorrow.
We couldn't do this without you. We are so grateful for you. And if you're interested in supporting us, you can check it out at patreon.com/ortussolutions. And now, Brad, do you want to butcher the names for us?
I can. I'm busy typing in a chat right now. James Moberg was saying in the chat that he got a reply from Adobe's PCert saying that it was not impacted. Which, from my understanding, they're saying that Adobe ColdFusion is not impacted by the Tomcat vulnerabilities. Now, they may be saying that because they have like a fork of Tomcat, and maybe they've already incorporated or worked around those, but I would certainly want them to 100% confirm that and not just be like, flippantly saying not impacted. So yeah, I'll have to follow up with that, James, because that definitely is a little concerning if there's unfixed Tomcat vulnerabilities that are affecting Adobe ColdFusion and the P-Cert's telling us that it doesn't. So yeah, unfortunately, I think their version of Tomcat they use is something they've forked, and I don't think the code's available. So it might be difficult to prove if those vulnerabilities are present in theirs or not. Anyway, we'll keep an eye on that. Thanks for being on that, James. So on to our Patreon supporters. Who do we have? Not the Bee Gees. Ben Nadell, Brett Deline, Carl von Stetten, Charlie Arehart, Dali, Dan Card, Daniel Garcia, David Bellinger, Didier Lesnicki, Don Bellamy, Edward Cabezas, Eric Hoffman, Gary Knight, Giancarlo Gomez, Jan Yannick, Jason Diger, Jeff McLean, Jeremy Adams, Jonas Erickson, Jordan Clark, Joseph Lamry, Kai Koenig, Laxma Turitardi, or I say that wrong, sorry, Mario Rodriguez, Matthew Darby, Matthew Clemente, Mingo Hagen, Ross Phillips, Ryan Hughes, Scott Steinbeck, Sean Oden, Stephen Klotz, Synaptrix, and Yogesh Mathur. Thank you so much to all you guys for supporting us via Patreon.
Thanks for joining us this week for the news, and we will catch you next week in November.
All right. Bye, guys.
Adios.
Show notes for this episode can be found at cfmlnews.modernize.io, where you can also subscribe to your favorite podcast player like Spotify or iTunes. We also have the link to YouTube to find more videos just like this. The music used in this podcast is under a royalty-free license from Sound.com and Blue Tree Audio.